If you're hanging out on the north side of Houston, you've got to check out the Farm Drinkery. It's an awesome dive bar located in Spring off of Champions Forest in Louetta. They've got 22 beers on tap, which you know what that means. They are representing the H-Town beer scene. But that's not all. They got great food too. My personal recommendation is to try out the world-famous wings. But the only thing better than an awesome new dive bar is a beer and food discount. You heard it. Beering Ain't Easy podcast listeners can go in and give the code BeerNerd20 for 20% off your bill. That's BeerNerd20 for 20% off. Come for the great atmosphere and stay for the free high fives.
God damn, I need IPA.
This is Beering Ain't Easy, your podcast for beer humor, dad humor, and beer tastings from Texas and beyond. So crack one if you got one and turn it up.
Welcome to Beering Ain't Easy, Season 2, Episode 10, with Adam, Ryan, and Drew.
Hey, who let this guy in here? You may have noticed that Ryan let us in tonight. We're missing one out of our three hosts tonight, with Adam taking a break for the week. So we're going to bring you something a little different. We're just going to let Ryan talk for an hour. So go ahead, Ryan.
I'm freezing up. This is bad.
We're off to a rocky start here. So what we decided to do, this is an idea we've had for a couple months now. We saw that the movie Beerfest had a 15-year anniversary kind of mid last year. We've been sitting on this idea of going back and doing a 15 years later review of the movie and its impact on the beer scene and society in general. So stay tuned. That's what we got for you. But I think first we should crack a beer. So Ryan, you want to introduce us on the beer today?
Yeah, we got the Schneider Weisse Aventinus Weizendopplebock. It's since 1907, coming in at 8.2%.
Damn, that is a long time ago.
Imported from Germany.
I always give you the hard beer names so that I don't have to say them.
Yeah, I can't wait till I get the messages about how I butchered the pronunciation. But yeah, this beer's got a 96% on Beer Advocate. So, and like I said, it's imported from Germany, which is appropriate since Beerfest starts at Oktoberfest.
Hell yes. And this is also a special beer. Adam and I have talked about it in previous episodes, but we've got a neighbor that listens to the podcast, and just on random times, he just shows up at the house with beer, and he's like, you should really try this on the episode. And so Manny, shouted out and said this was one of his favorite Doppelbocks of all time. So I'm pretty excited. I've never had this one before, and it smells delightful.
He perfected the von Wolfhausen beer recipe. It was the greatest beer in all the world.
So Beerfest came out in August of 2006. Where were you in 2006, Ryan?
So this was right at the start of my sophomore year of college, and I was 19 years old, I believe. Where were you?
I had just graduated college, but I wasn't adulting yet. I wasn't married yet, living the bachelor life, still in the realm of this type of humor,
Speaking of this type of humor, I'm just going to launch into this real quick. Like I said, I was 19 years old, so I'm just going to rattle off some movies that came out in the 3 years before and after this movie, when I was between 16 and 22, 23. So here's this list of movies: Old School, Anchorman, Napoleon Dynamite, Dodgeball, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Wedding Crashers, Talladega Nights. Beerfest comes out, and then it goes Superbad, Knocked Up, Step Brothers, Pineapple Express, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and The Hangover. Obviously, that's not all inclusive, but that's all within a 6-year period bracketing Beerfest. And that had a huge impact on the comedies in my life. So
I was just going to say, wow, that is an amazing list of comedies that you just rattled off. I would not include Beerfest particularly in that list, but the rest of those movies are really awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it explains why it kind of, it got buried by some huge comedies during that time.
Yeah, and
I guess for reference, we should mention that Super Troopers came out in 2001 or 2002, I think, and that is right before Old School, and that kind of is what put Broken Lizard, that comedy group, on the map.
Yeah, and I think we should talk a little bit about that. Is that what I think I only watched Beerfest once. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I think I remember more of the image it left on drinking beer more than anything. But Super Troopers, I think that movie has held up. I watched it not that long ago, and it's still, I mean, it's similar type of humor, but I think it was a pretty good movie. And that brought me into wanting to watch Beerfest because I'd seen Super Troopers.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you with the way Beerfest made you approach beer drinking, considering, like I said, we were sophomores in college. We lived on our own outside of, our fraternity house starting our junior year, and we would do these beer Olympics all the time. And I feel like that was hugely influenced by the fact that Beerfest was like a thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's been the lasting impression of this movie in the beer world is the whole beer Olympic games. That's this kicked it all off, and people have come up with some super creative drinking games as a result of this movie.
So in addition to, just the drinking games as a competition, the other huge one that stuck out rewatching the movie is Das Boot.
Yes.
I mean, was that really a thing, or did Beerfest really make that a normal, commonly known thing?
Yeah, I have up my notes here, and I wrote down the three things I did remember about the movie. I feel like it was my first, I'd heard the term Oktoberfest before, but I never knew it was some just giant big event. And that kind of introduced me to Oktoberfest for the first time. Das Boot for sure was on there as one of the things. And the whole spinning of the boot, it's one of those things that I memorized because I'm like, this could come in handy someday. I'm going to spin this boot and I'm going to not spill it all over myself.
Dude, I'm totally with you on that. And it's probably, it's almost 100% total bullshit, right? But in my mind, it's if I ever get in a boot drinking competition, I'm spinning that damn boot.
There's no question the boot is getting spun. There's physics behind it, apparently. Oh, man.
Okay, so the other thing I think that was a lasting cultural impression from this movie was the whole shtick about ZJs. Did you hear your friends joke about what's a ZJ?
I did not remember that at all when I watched the movie. I was like, what?
I feel like it was a common joke, a very played out joke with all of our friends. It was joking about what's a ZJ, which is funny because in the movie he's like $15 for a ZJ, and the guy's like, "What's a ZJ?" And he said, "If you have to ask, you can't afford it." Which clunky delivery there.
There was a couple of those punchlines where I was like, "What?" All right, so I think what we're gonna do as we're sipping this pretty sweet Doppelbock here, I'm gonna take us through a kind of a beat by beat, but a very high level beat by beat. And Ryan and I are going to jump in with some color commentary on this movie. So we're going to take you back 15 years and we're going to see the main question that we got to answer is, does this movie stand up the test of time? And is it an amazing comedy within the lines of all those movies that Ryan mentioned? Or is it a steaming pile of crap? We're going to find out at the end of this episode. So the movie starts in a pretty awesome fashion. There is two brothers that are watching a video at a funeral. That's their grandfather's funeral. And their grandfather is Donald Sutherland. You may remember him from the Hunger Games. But he died in a most spectacular fashion by pounding 3 beers and then pulling his own life support and then saying peace out to the world. So what did you think about that, Ryan?
I don't remember that opening scene at all. A lot of the stuff that I don't remember from the movie, I at least remembered on the rewatch was oh yeah, I don't remember that beginning funeral scene at all. Especially the part where they open up with the pastor, who's MC Gainey, by the way. He plays Swamp Thing in Con Air the Pilot.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I was very, very thrown off by the beginning of that entire movie.
So what do you think, though? Did that give you any ideas on how you want to go out of this earth?
I mean, that would be incredible. Yes, just to like pound a whole bunch of beers and then like go out on your own terms. Yeah. It sounds pretty awesome to me.
3 stars right there. All right. So the whole concept of the movie then is that they're supposed to go to Germany and spread their grandfather's ashes. And it takes them on a couple twists and turns here. So they get in a plane, they go to Oktoberfest. They basically just completely fail at Oktoberfest and cause a bunch of chaos, and random stuff goes down. And eventually they get chased out of Oktoberfest and they end up at this underground location where they're doing a beer competition that's took a lot of passwords to get through that. And if you remember on the Beering Ain't Easy podcast, we did a Beer Olympics episode. It's kind of like that, except it's more like Fight Club version of the Beer Olympics.
Yeah, and the best part of it is the password is a whole bunch of yodeling. They let him in, and then like you said, it's like the Fight Club version, so you're not supposed to talk about it. So the fact that this guy brought them to the competition, they bring him and shoot him just out of sight, so everyone hears the gunshots.
Yeah. So at that moment, we are introduced to the von Wolfenhausens, which is an interesting family, and it had a lot of faces that I did not remember were in the movie. Namely, Will Forte. I totally forgot that he was in this movie, and he was awesome.
That's one of my first notes too. I saw him and I was like, no shit.
And I don't know if you noticed, but they had like the 2 meatheads. It was like, I think their names were like Hammaker and Schlimmer or something like that. One of the guys was from the movie Gladiator. He was one of the gladiators.
Yeah, he looked familiar. That's definitely what I know him from.
So what we learn with the von Wolfenhausens is that this sets the plot line of the whole movie, is that apparently the 2 guys' grandfather had stolen a recipe of the best beer in the world and fled to the U.S. And the other big tagline of the story is that they accused their grandmother, also known as Gam Gam, as being a whore. And we're going to have to find out, is she really a whore for the rest of the movie?
Played by Cloris Leachman, by the way. Rest in peace.
So they try to defend Gam Gam's honor, and they try to get in a beer drinking competition, and they just get completely obliterated by the Germans. And they dump their grandfather's ashes all over them, and they send them packing. Which leads us to the recruitment scene where they go and they find all the best beer drinkers in America to come back to Beerfest and defend Gam Gam's honor. So what's the fat guy's name in this movie? Do you remember?
Landfill.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I should have remembered that. Every time I see that guy, I just want to call him Favre from Super Troopers.
100%. Yeah. He'll be known as Favre for the rest of his life, I'm sure.
Yeah. Team Ramrod. So they find him at a hot dog eating competition, and he was a former brewery worker that got fired for drinking his product and getting in fights or something. I don't know. So they pick him up. The next guy they pick up is a scientist that researches the ejaculation of frogs. So there's quite a extensive croaking scene as they're trying to recruit him from the labs. And of course he wants to join because he's the token Jewish guy of the group. And so anything to fight the Germans, he's all in. That's what brought him onto the team. And next they go meet their buddy Barry, who has become a male prostitute. And this is the reference to the ZJs that Ryan mentioned a minute ago, is that he's living a tough life. He's got pretty low rates. Let's just say that.
I have to imagine they're sitting around brainstorming the propositions that he was going to give. Had to be a fun time.
So what is a ZJ? I need to know.
Dude, you already know. If you have to ask, you can't afford it.
I think we should Urban Dictionary that shit, because if it didn't exist before the movie, it exists now. As a real act.
Yeah.
So now that they've got their team assembled, they roll back to, I guess they own a bar. That's convenient for the movie. And the bar is aptly named Shits and Giggles, which is a great bar name, by the way.
So actually, I wrote it down because I was like, I knew I wanted to keep it straight. It's Schnitz and Giggle.
Oh, Schnitz and Giggle. So now that they've determined that they are going to train for an entire year for Beerfest, they have a brutal hangover drinking all the beer they can drink, and a brutal hangover montage where
this part hit home for me, where they are about to start right at the beginning of that whole sequence. They all pour their first glasses from the keg, and they all cheers, and they all go to start chugging. And I think it's Landfill keeps chugging, but the rest of them like stop like after like 2 seconds, and they're like, "Oh, that's cold." And then someone's like, "Oh yeah, I think there's a bug in mine." You know, they're all like immediately like, "Oh, you know," like all these excuses for why they're struggling, and that really hit home for me, especially when we look back at the Houston Beer Mother episode where we shotgun beers, and I had to stop and move to the towel, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I started to spill."
Yeah, that's the real question. Is like binge drinking 15 years later. It ain't the same. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I felt that one in my bones for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And I noticed in my notes that the Landfill has a hot wife. It just doesn't make any sense at all for his character, but whatever. So they go to talk to Gam Gam to get the secrets of how to learn how to be a true German drinker. And she tells them the answer, and that's you got to drink ram's piss. And that's the obvious answer on how you can learn how to drink. And she also had a bunch of extensive sausage jokes to make you wonder, is she really a whore or not? I think her quote was, "I always sleep better with a sausage in me." So.
Yeah, she tries to hand out sausages, and she's like, "Oh, I got to warm them up," and she starts rubbing them between her hands.
So you know where this is going, obviously. They go practice their skills at a college party, drinking games so they can beat, college-age kids. And in the process, they break this doll that they'd been carrying around, this kind of creepy-looking doll, and they find the recipe for the greatest beer in the world. And so they brew it, and everyone loves it, and they bottle it.
We need to talk about this brewing scene.
Okay, let's hear it from the brewer's corner here.
Which, I mean, they were smart in the fact that they only made the entire brewing sequence like 10 seconds long. But so just as the absolute shortest possible way to describe the brewing process, you boil the malt, and then you sift out the wort, which is the sugar water, and then you add hops and boil it for a while longer, and then you ferment it, right? So, but what they do in the sequence is they pour a bunch of hops into a food processing canister and then immediately pour that into a pot. So I don't know why they poured it in that to start, but they pour it into a pot. After they pour it into a pot, they hand around a malt extract can to open it up to add it, which malt extract is the stuff you use with home brewing kits when you don't actually do all grain brewing yourself. So they basically got like a malt extract home brewing kit and then did it in the reverse order when they were trying to brew it.
So are you telling me that it's impossible that they could have made the best beer in the world using that methodology?
Hey, maybe we're all wrong.
They had the secret all along. It's the Northern Brewer.
I mean, there's another aspect of it which we'll get to later on when you get to that plot part, and we'll talk more about brewing technicalities.
Ooh, I like it. So the next scene was, in my opinion, very lengthy and highly unnecessary. There's a caretaker for Gam Gam who happens to be at their bar, and the Barry character, who was a cheap man whore, got a little too drunk and imagined her as very attractive when she's not, and they had an extended scene where they had some drunk hookup. What did you think about the drunk hookup scene, Ryan?
So, yeah, the extensive hookup scene, as well as like several other scenes throughout the movie where they just like gratuitous nudity for absolutely no reason outside of the fact to just throw it in there. It caught me off guard because you really don't see that at all anymore. it felt like to me, like after thinking about it, I was like, man, this feels like a throwback to like the old, like, you know, like Porky's and like Animal House, and like maybe like to an extent like Stripes, like those really old school comedies. It kind of felt like it was like a hat tip to that, and I'm hoping that's what it was, instead of just like, hey, let's throw a bunch of topless chicks in here at random times.
I was thinking the same thing, like a Mel Brooks movie or something, because it's like, oops, I fell over and I accidentally grabbed like 3 women's shirts and then they're all topless all of a sudden. It was like a slapstick.
Yeah.
Like,
and then they fell down and grabbed other girls' tops and pulled those down too. It was just like ridiculous.
Chain reaction. I was thinking the same thing. So that's hilarious. The Germans find out about the brewing of the beer. They have an insider, which we'll find out. And they travel to the U.S. to try to buy off the recipe. And they travel by U-boat, obviously, because they're German. So,
even though the bar is in Colorado.
I don't know which body of water they were traveling on, but it's a river or something. My favorite line of the movie comes up from the Germans, and they say, "It's time to shizen or get off the pot." That's my favorite line.
Well, my favorite part of the Germans' reaction, like actually that same scene, is they're in the bar and the cuckoo clock goes off, and one of the Germans looks up at it and goes, "What the fuck is that?" I found that very humorous.
Yeah. There's some, in retrospect, now that I've got a beer cracked. Okay, question for you: when you rewatch this, were you drinking beer or no?
100%. I knew I couldn't do it without drinking beer.
So I watched the first half of the movie without beer, and I was like, God, this movie is miserable. And the second half, I cracked a beer, and I was like, this is not so bad, So I think for all the listeners out there, you got to crack a beer or something while you're watching this movie to get the full experience.
So speaking of cracking beers, I should have brought this up when you were talking about how they play drinking games against college kids. But the main beer that they're like all drinking and stuff, they keep cracking it. It's called Heisler Beer. And I was like, I've seen that beer can before. So I did a quick Google search on it. And that's like one of those Hollywood prop beers. And from what I saw, it's been used in at least 55 movies and TV shows, that same exact beer.
Nice.
So yeah, look out for that beer.
I'm going to go watch all those movies and see if I can find, what is it called? Heisler?
Yeah, Heisler.
Nice. So after they refuse to sell their recipe to the Germans, they kind of have, the classic team falling apart scene. They all get in a fight. One of the guys banged the other guy's wife, and that got a little ugly. The landfill gets dumped by his wife for drinking too much, and Jewish guy got fired for cloning his frogs, or made a monkey frog, I think, or something weird like that.
Yeah, accidentally made it a frog and a monkey.
Yeah. And to top it all off, they had the final scene where the caretaker was the double agent for the Germans, and she was stealing the recipe, and she had a fight scene with landfill. This was like the most action in the movie right here. They were fighting near the brew kettle, and landfill falls in, and they had a long scene that made it look like he was going to drink an entire tank full of beer to survive. But no, big newsflash here. They come in and he's dead in the bottom of a tank. I had forgotten that scene, and that totally caught me off guard. That I was like, I think he was at the end of the movie. What the hell is he dead here for?
So yeah, this is the other funny technical part. There is open top fermentation, but when you do that, you have to have a really like wide vessel that's pretty shallow, so there's more exposure to the air because it's kind of like natural fermentation. Like Anchor does open top fermentation, but I did a little bit of research on it, and it actually is thought that if you do open top fermentation, it can accentuate like that clove flavor from like a Hefeweizen. So if it's a Hefeweizen, it can actually like help it be like a more robust, strong flavor. They never really say what this best beer in the world is, but we can go ahead and assume it's a Hefeweizen and give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, we extrapolate the facts of this highly technical movie.
Yeah, I think they put some thought into this.
Yeah. They consulted all the top brewers.
Yeah. Oh, and it's a clear tank too, so you can obviously see through it, which is perfect since light, helps beer for sure.
Yeah. There's nothing goes wrong with light in beer. Oh man. So we come to the second funeral of the movie for Landfill. And everyone's really upset and talking like they actually knew him and, that he was a good person. It was like, the thing that just like, I don't know if you noticed this, that just got me is that the actor that's playing Landfill sitting in the casket, he's got this like shit-eating grin. Like it's almost like he had the giggles the entire scene and he was the worst actor at playing dead in the world. I don't know if it was intentional, but he just had this like fucking smile on his face the whole time. And after the funeral, they run into Gam Gam, and she comes in to give them a pep talk about how they need to beat the Germans. She's known all along that they're training, and she reveals that, big surprise, she actually is a whore. So I guess the secret's out. And she brings a twist that they are not just stealers of the recipe. They're actually descendants of the brewery and have a somewhat of a questionable legal claim to the von Wolfhausen brewery in Germany.
As she says, the rightful heirs. The rightful heirs.
Yeah, I kind of lost track of that Ancestry.com lesson.
Yeah. It gets sketchy because, yeah.
And so, which brings us to a very awkward scene, probably the most awkward scene of the movie. They had kind of insinuated that the Barry character, he kind of had his hand shaking every time he tried to play ping pong. He was supposed to be this big ping pong champion. And we find out why he won't play it anymore. He tells a very sobering story where he was raped by a ping pong paddle, but not by the handle side. So this was a very awkward scene of the movie. What did you think about the ping pong scene, Ryan?
So the delivery is actually pretty good, I think, because like I had a ping pong paddle shoved up my ass, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm sure a lot of people have had ping pong paddles shoved up their ass," and he's like, "It wasn't the handle."
I had a moment there where I was trying to like figure that out of my head, and I just had to stop.
Yeah, if you watch, I don't know if you watched the outtakes during the credits.
Yeah,
but he struggled a lot saying I was playing ping pong and ding dang, which I can't tell if that does not age appropriately or not. I don't. Is ding dang a real place?
Next, we come to a scene as they're mourning Landfill and getting their pep talk from Gam Gam. Someone who looks like Landfill shows up to the party, and it, surprise, surprise, it is a Landfill's twin brother who apparently taught him everything he knew about drinking beer, which is very convenient plot twist for, he wants to honor his brother by joining their team to go beat the Germans. And just for convenience sake, he asked them all, "Can you just call me Landfill while you're at it?"
This seemed like such a throwaway chunk of the movie just to give it an extra like 20 minutes.
Yeah, there were a couple scenes like this where it was like the movie was a lot longer than I thought it should have been for a slapstick humor. It was a pretty lengthy. It felt long. I actually watched it in 2 sittings, as I mentioned before, but they could have cut out a little bit of that, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But Landfill's back in it, and he's arguably their best drinker of the team, so they need him to compete. So they try to go back to Germany, and they can't find out where they went last time to find Beerfest. And so obviously, what do? You have to get drunk to remember the way. And so they got really hammered, and they find the way back to Beerfest. But the password has changed. It's no longer the yodeling. And so they have to employ a secret measure. They get in the Trojan keg. They all hide in a keg, and they are delivered inside Beerfest, which is a pretty good move right there. I think they use some ingenuity. So now, the main event. They're fighting for their grandpa's honor at Beerfest. So the way Beerfest works, it is a playoff against country versus country. So they have to go through the Brits first. And I did jot down that Landfill had a quote that says, "Let's kick their ass like in WW2," which he's obviously a historian.
I thought that was pretty sneaky good.
Yeah.
I don't remember who's standing next to him, but he says it. He gets this like really confused look on his face right before they cut the shot.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so that was like intentional.
So next they go through a montage of all these crazy beer competitions that they have as they work their way up to the finals against the Germans. So I jotted down a bunch of them. Did you take away any of those games that you watched them play that you're like, damn it, next time we do Beer Olympics, we're adding that to the rotation?
I mean, something like Speed Quarters was interesting, but the one that I was really curious about was like the I don't remember what they call it, like the high pour or the distance pour.
The long pour, yeah.
Long pour.
I thought that one was fun too. They're like pouring beer from an elevated structure into their teammate's mouth, and whoever like spills the least wins. That's a pretty intense game.
Yeah, that's like one of those ones, but it's like whoever drinks their whole pitcher first, but like spills the least. So it's like how much is too much spillage? Yeah, I don't know. Seems highly questionable to me.
Yeah, you have to have an unbiased judge in that situation. So as Ryan mentioned, there's more of the slapstick random boobs in Beerfest. That was part of the montage, just for shiz and giggle,
for schnitz and giggle.
Schnitz and giggle. All right. So finally, the main event: Germany versus U.S. As they are taking a pee break, which is in a giant trough, the scientist has a revelation. They've been trying to figure out the whole movie how to drink out of the boot without it getting a bubble and splashing in your face. And he has the revelation that there's some physics. As you twist it, right as you're getting to the bottom of the boot, it keeps the bubble from forming and it lets the beer go down easy. So really good timing because they're about to have to use that skill. They go in the challenge against the Germans. They lose the first 3 challenges, and then they win the next 3, including a ping pong challenge where they make the bet the loser gets a paddle up their ass, which seems a little painful. There also was a scene where the gladiator guy ate his glass after beer pong, which was kind of really hard to watch because he had blood all pouring out of his mouth as he was eating the glass. It was intense. But the final tiebreaker is Das Boot. And obviously, since they just learned about the technique of spinning the boot, they are going to win this for sure, right? Actually, they lose. The caretaker from Gam Gam comes out and distracts Landfill's twin brother and talks about how she killed Landfill in the beer vat. And they lose. So movie's over, and we go to the end credits. But no, that's not what happens. They challenge the von Wolfenhausen's Double or Nothing. And what we find out is that the recipe wasn't stolen after all. They had it all along, and it seems like that would have come in handy in some way that they actually had it still. They had leverage, but I guess the caretaker had burned a CD, which dates this movie a little bit, that had what was it, like some sort of strawberry
beer? He
beer?
Just calls it a strawberry beer. He says, it's okay.
Yeah, as most strawberry beers are. So what do they do for the tiebreaker? They bring out 5 boots. So it's 5 versus 5. And they each are, in lockstep, one after the other, finishing their boots. They get down to the last boot, and the Germans have beat them again. But part of the boot challenge is they have to turn the boot over, and no spills are allowed. And unfortunately, the German has a single drop that comes out of his boot, which disqualifies them, and the Americans win.
This is why Adam couldn't be here. We didn't want to spoil it for him.
That's exactly right. I don't know about you, but every time I've chugged something out of a pitcher or a bottle, and if I were to turn over my glass, I don't know that there would ever be a time where I wouldn't have a single drop come out of it.
I'm pretty sure it's impossible to get every drop out.
Especially with all the curves with the boot. I mean, there'd have to be something trapped in there. Oh, well.
I'm glad we were able to poke one hole in the plot of this movie.
So they beat the Germans. They the double or nothing, I forgot to mention, what was on the line was the recipe versus the brewery. So in winning Beerfest, the Americans have taken over the von Wolfenhausen brewery and are now going to live out the rest of their days living the good life, running a brewery. And so the movie ends, but if you stick around a little longer and you're a fan of end credit scenes, you do have a cameo by Willie Nelson, which I very much appreciated. And Willie is in a similar location as Beerfest, but he's there for the World Championship of pot smoking, and he is looking for 4 more teammates to join him in the pot smoking competition, which sets up the concept of a pot fest movie, which never materialized. Maybe due to the performance of Beerfest.
I actually looked into this. So you ready for this?
Okay.
They initially intended that as a joke to get publicity, but people were like excited about it. And so they revealed that it might happen. They got Willie Nelson, Cheats of Cheech and Chong, and Snoop Dogg all agreed to appear in a movie if they made it about that. And they kept saying it was going to happen. And then they released Super Troopers 2. And then they confirmed the year after Super Troopers 2 that they were actually going to do Pot Fest. And then it just kind of like fizzled out and never actually happened. And there's been no announcements about it ever since. So apparently it was a joke, but then it actually like kind of became a thing. And then it just, never materialized.
Well, they better shizen or get off the pot because Willie Nelson ain't got too many years left. What about this beer, man? Anything on this beer that you want to talk about?
Man, well, as I was listening to you recap the plot, I just like kept sipping away at this thing. And I see you have about half left. Mine's already gone. It was delicious. It was very sweet, like caramely, had like a really good, like creamy, like kind of thick body to it. I enjoyed this one a lot.
This is a really good Doppelbock for sure. All right. So that wraps up Beerfest. I went up and investigated what the score, I should have looked on Rotten Tomatoes, but I just looked on IMDb and it had a 6.3 out of 10 scale on Beerfest. So watching it 15 years later, Ryan, out of score 1 to 10, where would you rate Beerfest and why?
So, I mean, back in the day when I was watching it, I probably would give it like a 7. Like I thought it was like, altered my life a little bit in the fact of how I could approach like drinking and like playing games, drinking. Now probably like a 5. I think there's some sneaky, like it's stupid comedy. It's none of it's like highbrow. Like it's all like on the nose, like hits you with the punchlines immediately everywhere. But at least it is pretty funny concepts everywhere. So I'm giving it a 5. I enjoyed it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So from a pure cinematography standpoint, this movie is terrible.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's really a bad movie. But there's not many movies that have such a lasting impact. Like it's impacted breweries especially. Like I don't know if there's a movie that's been more ripped off by breweries than this one. Like I'm actually holding a beer right now, which I may get into later from Eureka Heights in Houston. And it's the von Wolfenhausen beer. And this was their Festbier. And I think the beer in our Oktoberfest episode we drank from Ingenious, like they were all dressed up like they were in Beerfest. So it's very much made an impact on the beer industry for sure.
I've let you say von Wolfenhausen the entire episode, but it's actually just von Wolfhausen.
Am I getting it mixed up with like Castle Wolfenstein?
Probably.
Video game. All right, whatever. We're not experts here.
You said you didn't look this up on Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes has the tomato meter, which is like the critics rating, and then they have the audience score. So Beerfest has a 41% tomato meter. What would you guess Super Troopers has?
Ooh, I'm going to go 55%.
35.
Really?
They thought Beerfest was better than Super Troopers.
No way. There's no way.
But the people got it right because the audience score gave Super Troopers a 90 and gave Beerfest a 75.
Yeah,
that
sounds
feels
about
more
right.
accurate.
There's some good stuff in Super Troopers. Not Super Troopers 2. That movie's garbage too. But the first one is really good.
So I actually kind of like Super Troopers 2.
Did you? I mean, it was okay, but it didn't. You know, it's hard to do sequels, man. It's hard to pull off a sequel.
No, it definitely wasn't as good as one. They basically like retreaded all of the gimmicks, but I don't know. It was enjoyable enough.
Yeah, I still watch it. No doubt. So back to my rating. Because of that lasting impact, because all breweries still talk about this movie, it made me think about Oktoberfest a lot more than I probably ever did in my life. I can't rate it any as a movie. I'd probably go sub 5 on it, but I can't go sub 5 based on the lasting impact. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna go a 5.5 out of 10.
Hey, I didn't think there was a chance you were going to go higher than me. I'm pleasantly surprised here.
By the end of it, and as we're talking about it, like it's funny for what it is, but you don't go into it thinking you're going to watch something that's actually got good acting or clever jokes. It's cheap humor.
You hit it. That's the key. You have to go in knowing what you're getting, and then you enjoy it.
Yeah,
way more.
No doubt.
Barry, what are you doing?
You kidding me? She's hot as hell. Looking for a little slap and pickle.
You sure you want to do this, man? You're drunk.
I'm drunk. You're drunk. Everybody's drunk.
This is the Beering Ain't Easy take on the movie Beerfest 15 years later. The reason we did the timing of this movie now is that it is currently streaming for free on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, check it out. Let us know your thoughts. Did we get it wrong? Is this the greatest movie of all time? I don't know. So as we get to the close of our episode here, I will just say, check us out on crossthestreamsmedia.com. Find us on Instagram, Facebook at Beering Ain't Easy. We got all kinds of great episodes. Ryan, take us home.
Well, we're glad the audience had a chance to learn everything there is to know about the 2006 cult classic Beerfest. Tune in next episode. Adam will be back from getting his ZJ, and we'll take back over opening and closing duties. We'll see y'all next time.
This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production in Houston, Texas. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you want to see what we're drinking, our untapped handles are Beering Ain't Easy Adam and Beering Ain't Easy Drew.
This has been a Cross the Streams Media Podcast.